She said she'd wait for me while I was dodging bullets in Afghanistan, but the only thing she was loyal to was someone else's bed. Hey everyone, real quick before we jump in. The channel's been slowing down a bit, and your support really helps. If you haven't already, hitting that subscribe button is a small way to make a big impact. It's free, takes a second, and helps us keep making the content you enjoy. Thanks so much. Now, let's get into it. They say your life changes the day you sign the papers, but mine had already started changing long before that. In truth, it began the day I met Ashley. Or maybe it started before that, in those quiet nights lying in bed, wondering if I'd ever do anything that mattered. Ashley just made it all seem like it could finally make sense. It was early 2010. I was 22, scraping by with odd jobs around Denver, part-time construction gigs, helping a buddy with drywall, hauling gear for weekend events, and a few nights a week bouncing at dive bars where the beer was cheap and the fights were cheaper. Not exactly the American dream. But I wasn't looking for a dream. I was looking for something real, something solid, and I thought I'd found it in her. Ashley. Blonde hair that shimmered like sunlight on snow, and a laugh that made even the worst days feel like summer. The kind of laugh you remember when your world goes dark. We met at a Rockies game the summer before. We were both pretending we liked baseball more than we actually did. She spilled her beer on my shirt and apologized with a flirty smile. I told her she owed me another, and she bought it. We stood there, leaning on the railing, talking through innings we barely watched. I joked it was destiny. Cheesy, sure. But something about that moment stuck. And deep down, I think she felt it too. We clicked instantly. Sunday walks through City Park, sitting on the hill and watching kids chase geese. She loved autumn, said it made her feel like life was starting over. She talked about opening a bakery someday, making cupcakes with names like Denver Sunrise and Mile High Cocoa. I talked about going back to school, maybe learning a trade, doing something my old man could finally be proud of. We dreamed together like we were drawing blueprints for a future no one could touch. She'd curl up next to me on the couch, barefoot and smelling like cinnamon, and trace her dreams on my chest with her finger while the TV played quietly in the background. I thought we were building something. At least, I thought we were. Then my cousin Kyle came back from Iraq. He wasn't the same guy I grew up playing backyard football with. He was quieter, eyes older than they should have been. The kind of look that says you've seen things you don't talk about. He didn't open up much about what he saw, but he said the Army gave him something he couldn't find back home. Direction, discipline, brotherhood, a reason to wake up. He said that when you're over there, everything is clear. You know who you are. And when you come back, you don't. That hit me harder than I expected. I looked at my life and saw nothing. No momentum, no mission. Just a guy floating through time hoping things would change without lifting a damn finger. Maybe I was tired of feeling useless. Maybe I wanted to prove something to myself, to Ashley, to the world. I remember sitting on the porch after Kyle left, watching the streetlights flicker on and thinking, what if this is it? What if I die a nobody? So I enlisted. Ashley cried when I told her. She didn't scream, didn't call me selfish. She just let the tears fall and held on my hand like she was afraid it would disappear. Said she'd wait, said she'd write every week, said, just come back to me, Chad. I remember that last night like it's etched into my bones. Her head on my chest, my fingers in her hair, the quiet between us, louder than any goodbye. I kissed her like I was anchoring myself to something permanent, something pure, something I'd fight to return to. I didn't know that kiss would have to carry me through a war. Kandahar was a different planet. You hear about war zones in movies or on the news, but nothing prepares you for the way the air feels like ash or how the dust seeps into every fold of your soul. The color of the sky never looked right, like brass soaked in smoke. We landed under that yellow haze, and from the second my boots hit the dirt, I knew I'd stepped into something bigger than anything I'd ever known. Our base was barely more than a few concrete barriers, a bunch of sandbags and tents flapping in the wind. It smelled like diesel, sweat, hot metal, and fear. Constant fear. The first few weeks were a blur. Mortars would scream through the night. You'd be halfway through a meal and then sprinting for cover. We'd get briefed in tents with barely functional AC, everything always sticky and loud. We went out on patrols with our hearts in our throats, scanning every rooftop and shadow. You learn fast. Stay alert, follow your buddy's lead, don't get sentimental. But the worst part wasn't the firefights. It wasn't the heat or the bad food or even the aching silence after someone didn't come back. It was the in-between moments, the waiting, the sitting in your cot with sweat pooling in the small of your back, staring at the canvas ceiling while your thoughts drifted back home, wondering if Ashley still thought about me when the wind rattled her window at night, wondering if she still wore the hoodie I left behind. Ashley wrote, just like she said she would, every week. Her letters became my anchor. Her handwriting looked like sunlight and ink, swirled and perfect. Sometimes she sprayed her perfume on the envelope. God, I'd press it to my face like it was oxygen. I'd keep them in my ammo box like treasure. She told me about the little things, new recipes she tried, how her dog wouldn't stop chewing her shoes, how her sister was dating some guy with a weird mustache and a love for folk music. She sent photos, too. Her holding a cake she baked, her bundled up in a scarf I bought her smiling in the mirror, the denim jacket I gave her hanging off one shoulder like it didn't belong to anyone else. She said she missed me, that the bed was too cold without me, that the town felt emptier, that she was counting the days, and I believed it, every single word. In return, I wrote about the safe stuff, the jokes, the dumb moments like when a goat walked into our tent and nearly scared Jenkins into a heart attack, or when Jackson shaved his head and ended up looking like a bowling ball with eyes, or how the coffee was strong enough to melt paint. I didn't tell her about Stevens, about how he took a round to the neck and bled out while we screamed for a medic. I didn't tell her about the day we found a kid holding a grenade like it was a toy. I didn't tell her how I started drinking coffee just to stay awake because the nightmares were worse than the exhaustion. I wanted to protect her from all of it, but maybe I was just trying to protect myself from the truth, from the idea that the life I was fighting to come back to might not be waiting, that maybe while I was dodging bullets and patching up wounds that would never really heal, she was drifting, because somewhere out there back in Denver, Ashley was already slipping away, and I was too deep in the desert to see it coming. I started to notice it around month 6. The letters got shorter, the handwriting more rushed, less perfume, less Ashley. She started signing them with just her first initial, A. It was like watching someone turn the volume down on your favorite song until it became a whisper. I tried not to read into it, told myself she was just tired, busy. Maybe life back home was getting heavier than she let on. I kept making excuses for her because if I didn't, I'd have to start asking the questions I wasn't ready to hear the answers to. Then the photos stopped. At first I thought it was the APO system messing up again. Delays were common. I'd had a letter arrive 2 months late once. But the other guys, they were still getting birthday cards, care packages, snapshots of wives and girlfriends holding babies or posing with the family dog. Jenkins got a photo of his girl in a Broncos jersey. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Mine had stopped coming altogether. The worst part? I still wrote. Every week. Like nothing had changed. Like I didn't feel her slipping away. I'd tell her about everything. How we built a little makeshift gym out of scrap metal and cinder blocks. How I beat Jackson in push-ups 5 days in a row. How Jenkins nearly cried when he found a jar of peanut butter in a care package from his mom. I wrote about the heat, the dust, the way the stars looked too sharp at night. And I told her I missed her. God, I told her I missed her. Then came the envelope. It was thin, no perfume, just a single sheet of paper folded once. Her handwriting was still neat, still hers, but it felt cold, foreign, like it came from a stranger using her hands. Chad, I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this in a letter. I waited as long as I could, but I met someone. I didn't plan it. It just happened. He's been helping me through this. I never stopped caring about you, but things changed. I've changed. I hope you come home safe. Ashley. That was it. No apology, no explanation, no goodbye, just a period, a full stop at the end of a sentence I thought we were still writing together. My world went quiet. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it back up, placed it inside the envelope, and tucked it into the side pocket of my rucksack, like it was just another piece of gear I didn't want to lose. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the dirt outside the tent until the shapes blurred and everything around me became white noise. That night, we got mortared. One landed 50 yards from our barracks, rattled the ground like a hammer hitting bone. Guys were shouting, scrambling for cover. I didn't even flinch, just sat there on the edge of my cot, motionless, like the blast hadn't touched me. And in a way, it hadn't, because something inside me had already gone numb. The guys noticed. Jackson offered me his last cigarette, and Jackson never shared smokes. Jenkins tossed me a protein bar like it was gold. Nobody said a word. They just looked at me different. Not with pity, with understanding. The silent kind that only comes from men who've lost things they can't talk about. Something in me snapped, but it didn't break. It calcified, hardened, like scar tissue over a wound that never got to bleed. I felt less like a person and more like a machine that had been told to keep moving no matter what. From that day on, I stopped writing. I signed up for every patrol, took every shift no one wanted, volunteered for the ones that turned stomachs. I took point, cleared houses, walked into the dark when no one else wanted to. I wasn't reckless. I was surgical, precise, cold. My CO called me dependable. Jackson called me crazy. I didn't care. I became someone else, someone I didn't fully recognize. A version of me that didn't flinch, didn't feel, didn't dream. But the others? They respected him, respected me. They said I was fearless. They thought I was brave. But I didn't feel brave. I just felt emptied out. Yet in that emptiness, something started to grow. It wasn't grief. It wasn't pain. Not anymore. It was revenge. Not the kind they show in movies, not a shootout, not a dramatic confrontation under pouring rain. No, this would be something else, something slower, colder, a different kind of justice. I didn't know what it would look like yet, but I knew I'd figure it out once I got home, once I saw her face again. Because Ashley didn't just break my heart. She didn't just leave me alone in the middle of a war. She made me a ghost with a gun. And ghosts don't forget. They haunt. Coming back wasn't like in the movies. No band playing, no parade, no warm embraces from grateful strangers or slow-motion reunions on airport runways. Just a bus wheezing to a stop outside a desolate VA center and a bunch of worn-out men dragging duffels heavier than they looked. We stepped off like ghosts coming home to a world that forgot us. My boots hit American soil, but it didn't feel like home, not anymore. Denver looked the same, but I didn't. The streets still cracked the same way. The traffic still sucked. Coffee still cost too much. But something beneath all of it felt alien. Like the entire city had kept spinning while I stood still, somewhere far away, in a place made of heat and dust and noise. I'd stare at familiar corners and try to remember who I used to be when I stood there, but the memories were like snapshots left in the sun, faded and blurred at the edges. My mom cried when she saw me at the terminal. Her hands shook when she touched my face, as if she thought I might vanish if she blinked. My dad tried to stay strong, jaw clenched, nod firm, but his handshake lingered too long. His silence said what his pride wouldn't. I stayed with them for a while, slept in my old room, now a museum to a boy who hadn't come back. But it didn't take long to realize I didn't belong there anymore. There were too many questions they didn't know how to ask. Too many silences I didn't know how to break. Every conversation felt like walking a tightrope above old wounds. But I knew where she was. Ashley hadn't moved far. Still the same part of town, just a new apartment with a new man. A fact I found through a birthday photo tagged by a mutual friend on Facebook. Her smile in that picture didn't look forced. It looked free, and that burned more than I wanted to admit. Her life looked picture perfect. New furniture, polished apartment, a golden retriever, and him. Tall, neatly trimmed beard, wore button-ups with rolled sleeves and khakis, the kind of guy who posted book quotes on Instagram and said things like emotional maturity without choking. The kind of guy who was safe, predictable, who probably lit candles before dinner and knew how to fold a fitted sheet. The opposite of war. That made it easy. I didn't want to hurt her, not physically. That would be too fast, too loud, too simple. What I wanted couldn't be wrapped in fists. I wanted her to feel the quiet kind of fear, the kind that creeps in when you're brushing your teeth and suddenly feel like someone's watching. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to question reality, to wake up and wonder if the world you built was still standing. I wanted her to feel what I felt when I read her letter that night in Kandahar. So I planted the idea. It started with a text from an unknown number. You remember what you did? Because I do. Then a postcard. No return address. Just a photo of our base in Afghanistan. On the back, scrawled in black ink, you left me in the dust, but I remember the smell of your perfume. Then came the late night knocks. 3 taps. Just enough to make her check the door. But no one would be there. A week later, I left a rose on her windshield, wrapped in a napkin from that diner we used to eat at after my shifts. I hacked into her playlist, changed one song, just one, our song, the one we danced to in the kitchen when the world still felt full of promise. It played while she drove to work. She pulled over and cried. The boyfriend noticed first. He thought she was losing it, maybe cheating, maybe just unraveling. I watched them argue one night, standing in their living room, backlit by a TV they forgot to mute. He paced. She cried. He raised his voice. She begged. I leaned against my parked car across the street and smiled. I never laid a finger on her. I didn't need to. I just reminded her of the war she thought she could walk away from. Eventually, they broke up. I knew they would. He moved out. She stayed for a little while, but she stopped going to the gym, stopped posting online. The world got smaller around her. Then she moved in with her sister across town. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes looked tired in the pictures. I heard from someone she started therapy. One rainy morning, I left a final envelope on her doorstep. No note, just the letter she sent me, the one that ended it all. I wanted her to see it again, to remember what it cost, to know I hadn't forgotten, that I never would. Then I disappeared. No calls, no messages, no sign. I deleted the dummy accounts, burned the burner phone, took the long roads out of town, because I'd done what I came home to do. Not to heal, to haunt.